Okay, I want to talk about the educational spectrum. This is the second of those key concepts that I said at the beginning. I want to make sure you really understand. And to help you understand this concept, I have to tell you the story about my father's grapefruit tree. When my parents retired, when my dad retired from his job, my parents moved to Arizona. They bought a house just outside of Phoenix, on the west side of Phoenix, and in their yard were a couple of orange trees, and right off the patio was a grapefruit tree. So one morning, it's February, I'm living in Denver at this time. Denver, as you know, in February can be cold, wet, and snowy. And sure enough, that morning, I had fought through a lot of snow to get to my office. I had an office right downtown on the 16th Street Mall, if you know Denver. About 7:30, I'm in my office, and the phone rings. It's my dad. "Hey, son, just called to see how you were doing." "I'm fine, Dad. I'm at the office." "Well, I'm about to have my breakfast, and I just stepped out onto the patio and picked a fresh grapefruit. I sure do like grapefruit with my breakfast. I'm loving it." And I'm thinking, life is really not fair. He's getting fresh grapefruit, and I'm fighting a snowstorm. We had a conversation, said goodbye. But as I thought about it, and the reason I share that story with you is to answer this question. When my dad stepped out on the patio that morning to pick his grapefruit, were all of the grapefruit on the tree ripe? Well, of course not. There were some that were still green. There were others that were so ripe they'd already fallen to the ground. In fact, the piece of fruit that my dad picked that day, a week earlier, was probably one of those green fruit. Well, the same thing is true with your customers. Not everybody is ready to buy at the same time. Now, if you've ever worked in a sales organization or you have managed salespeople, you have probably heard the term, "Well, go after the low-hanging fruit." And what that means is, go find the prospects that are ready to buy. They've got their credit card in hand and they're ready to buy. Well, the problem with that is if someone has already decided what they want to buy, now all they're looking for is price. So if they're ready to buy, all they're looking for is the low price vendor. And again, that's a war you don't want to get into. So let me introduce you to the concept of the educational spectrum. And what I want you to do is think of a continuum between 1 and 10. And at the beginning of that continuum, a prospect decides, hey, I want to buy a product or service. And they start thinking about it. They begin on a casual basis to gather some information. There's no sense of urgency yet. They might talk to their friends and see if there's a recommendation. They're just kind of at the beginning of the process. But as they move through that process, they start to gather more information. They narrow down to a number of products. They begin to look at potential vendors. And they make a decision to buy, but they haven't necessarily decided who they're going to buy from yet. And then the last part of the spectrum is they wait for the timing to be just right for them when they're actually ready to make that purchase. They evaluate proposals or they evaluate what they've learned as they've gone to different vendors, and then they make the purchase decision. So what would happen if instead of waiting till this prospect was ready to buy, you could reach them earlier in the process? What if you could put marketing materials in front of them early in that process so that you could earn that right to be one of the vendors they consider? Let me give you an example of this before I jump into the marketing equation. Let's say you've decided that you want to buy a car. And you've looked around, you've decided that, well, I don't necessarily want to buy a new car because I don't want to take the depreciation hit that I'm going to incur in the first couple of months. So I'm going to look for a good quality used car, maybe a car that's just a couple years old. So in your mind, you're thinking, hey, I want to look for a used car. You're going through Facebook one day, you're just kind of casually looking through, and all of a sudden over on the right-hand side is an ad that pops up that says, hey, here are 4 tricks that used car dealers use to sell you a car. And you're thinking, wow, I'm thinking about buying a used car. I should look at this. You click on the ad, and it says, here are 4 tricks that car dealers use. Make sure you learn these before you go to the car lot. And then in bullet points are the 4 tricks. And underneath is an offer that says, hey, we've got 12 more things that you should know before you go shopping for a car. Click here to get our free report. And you notice down at the bottom, it's from Joe's Car Lot. Well, you're thinking to yourself, gosh, this Joe's a pretty good guy. I'm looking for a good used car. He's providing me with valuable information that will help me make a decision. I'm going to download this report and see what Joe has to say. And after you've studied the report and as you continue to move through the educational spectrum, it's highly likely that Joe will be one of the vendors, one of the car lots that you go visit when you're ready to buy. So the point is you want to start emphasizing marketing to all phases of the decision-making process, the educational spectrum that your prospects go through, and not just focus on the last couple of steps when they're ready to buy. You want to hit them early in the funnel rather than late.